Welcome back, my Pastafarians, to another week of Chemo Creepypasta. So I was surprised with the reaction that I got to my first ever video, and it seemed to be pretty positive. So I'm going to try again this week to bring you another story that you've never heard before. Now, on Google Plus, one of my followers suggested that I do Smile Dog, and I can't do that. Can't read a story that someone else has written unless I have their permission to do it. So I'm gonna either have to write my own, or maybe not do that right now. Or by all means, if anyone wants to write me one that's 100% theirs and send it in, I'll read it for you guys. This guy I'm talking about also that suggested it, he has one, a creepypasta in the making that I would actually really like to read on my next show. So please look forward to that. Anyways, since he said Smile Dog and I had this Pokepasta already kind of ready to go, this week's story is going to be a Pokepasta that I wrote called Pokemon Dogs. Please enjoy. It happened when I was 18. I was still in high school and a complete closet Pokemon fan. I'd collected the first and second generation games, which, for anyone who isn't familiar with Pokemon, includes red, blue, yellow, gold, silver, and crystal. I'd even managed to collect the original 150 Pokemon in my red game thanks to my brother's Game Boy and Link cable. My senior year in high school was pretty average. I'd go to school, come home, and run to my Game Boy, sometimes even ignoring my dog when she begged for attention. Many times my mom would yell at me, all but kindly asking me to take her for a walk. Sometimes I did, but most times I admit I didn't. My life continued on like this for a few months, until one day I returned home from school, and like any other day, ran immediately to my bedroom to play Pokemon. Today, I was excited, because I had just gotten Pokemon Crystal on my way home, and I always got that giddy feeling when I was about to start a new game. But just as I went to choose my starter Pokemon, and I was gonna pick Totodile for anyone who would ask, my mom opened my door with a sad look on her face. Izzy got out this afternoon and she got hit by a car, she said between sobs as tears welled up on her face. I sat on my bed, my mouth hanging agape. I just nodded at her. She turned and left, shutting the door behind her. I started to cry, the giddiness the game had previously given me forgotten. I shut off my Game Boy and went to sleep. I woke up the next day in a cold sweat. I knew I'd been having a nightmare, but as I tried to remember it, it started to fade away until it was nothing but an eerie feeling. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and looked at my room. Something seemed off about it, although everything was in its place. Just then it occurred to me that music was playing softly, which was odd because I can only sleep in complete silence. I listened to the soft 8-bit style music and realized it was the familiar music of a battle in every single Pokemon game. I looked down at my bed and saw that my Game Boy was still on, and my character was in the middle of a battle with a Houndour. I looked at the game and thought it odd how I had gotten this far in battle without actually playing, but kind of dismissed it to a restless night. I picked up the game and saw that my Totodile was actually winning, and the wild Houndour's HP was in the red. I quickly went into my bag and saw that I had one Pokeball, and decided to use it. The animation played like usual, and I watched, holding my breath, as the Pokeball rolled back and forth a few times. Just as the animation confirming I had caught the Pokemon played, I let out a loud sigh. Then the option of giving the Pokemon a nickname popped up. Now, usually I hated the idea of naming Pokemon, and the fact you couldn't rename traded Pokemon irritated me to no end. But this time I felt oddly compelled to name this one. The keyboard appeared and I thought of what to name the Houndour. Then it all came back to me, my dog dying the night before. I had thought it was part of the nightmare I'd had, but it was starting to occur to me that it had really happened. That's when I decided to name my Pokemon Isabella, in tribute to my recently departed pet. The game wouldn't let me use that many characters in its name, so I had to settle for Izzy. I hit OK and was returned to the overworld. I quickly opened my party and looked at the new addition. Its stats were actually quite good despite it being level 5, and to my surprise, it was a playfully natured female. Perfect, I said out loud as the trait described my late family pet to a T. I immediately put Izzy in the front of my party, pushing my Totodile into second place. At first it struck me as odd that I'd gotten my favorite starter Pokemon considering I hadn't saved the game the night before, but I tried not to think too much about it. I even told myself that I probably didn't even actually turn it off the Game Boy last night due to my short fingernails. I mean, it happened before. Over the next few weeks, I played religiously, training Izzy, and even releasing my Totodile because I felt bad he wasn't being used. It was me and Izzy against the Pokemon world. That was until I met her, the new girl at school. And for privacy's sake, I'll call her May. I had started talking to May when she was partnered with me in our English class, and we had actually hit it off quite well. Over the following weeks, we had started to develop a relationship, and I had quickly began devoting all of my time to her, forgetting about Izzy and our conquering of the Pokemon League. Months went by, and my relationship with May started to fade, like most high school romances do. As I started losing interest in my girlfriend, I found myself watching more and more television. One day, while channel surfing, I saw something that made me stop. On the TV was Ash and some new ragtag team off catching Pokemon. Suddenly, I was reminded of my unfinished Crystal game and my one Pokemon, Izzy. Quickly, I ran to my room and frantically started searching for my Game Boy. After searching for what felt like hours, I found my treasured game system, between the headboard and the mattress. I fished it out, and to my surprise, it was on, with press start blinking and the legendary Pokemon Suicune adorning the backdrop, just like normal. But when I pressed play and selected my character, a text box appeared saying,
"Are you sure? Yes or no?"
I clicked yes, trying to remember if that had ever happened before. The game started and I was where I remembered being last time I played. Quickly I checked my party, and there was Izzy, its Houndoom sprite visible, as I had evolved it quite early in our training. I toggled to its stats, and they were fine, but its picture looked off. Nothing drastic, but it gave me the feeling of despair. Then I looked at its nature. To my surprise, instead of playfully natured, it now said lonely. Immediately I was put off by this, but saw it as minor, and since I'd never really looked into the features of the game, I kinda shrugged it off as a new mechanic put in so you didn't forget to visit your Pokemon daily. I figure it best I go battle in order to cheer up my one and only Pokemon. I ran into some tall grass for a second, and realized my screen was doing the flashing thing it does when your Pokemon is affected by poison or something. Immediately I checked my party, and although Izzy had no effects on her, her health was at the halfway mark. I panicked and started for the nearest Pokemon Center, but on the way the flashing continued until a text box appeared.
"Izzy has succumbed to loneliness and died."
I stared at the screen in disbelief before checking my party. Izzy's HP was at -1. I shook my head because, as far as I had known, Pokemon only fainted, but then I remembered that sometimes these games get butchered when translated. I continued to the Pokemon Center in the next town and tried to get them to heal Izzy, but all Nurse Joy's text box said was,
"I'm sorry, but I can't help you."
This is when I started to think the game was more than a little fucked up. But the rational side of me said that there was obviously a quest he had to do before being able to use this Pokemon Center. I exited the center and looked for the nearest Pokemart. I entered, and to my luck, they had full revive. I bought one and immediately used it on Izzy, but instead of her health going up, it started to drop. Dropped down from -1 to -50, and finally stopped at -100. As soon as the full revive was used, I was returned to the overworld and greeted with a text box,
"Izzy wants to battle."
and the battle transition started. At this point, I was confused, because if Izzy had been my only Pokemon, how was I going to battle against her? And, more importantly, how was this happening? Pokemon don't battle their trainers. At least not in the games. As the battle started, instead of a sprite for a Houndoom appearing besides Izzy's name, the sprite of a glitchy dog appeared, that I'd never seen on any glitch site. But I assumed it was much the same as Missing No. The weird part was that the glitchy's dog battle cry was still that of my Houndoom. I sat there staring at my character's sprite, as it appeared where a Pokemon should have. Then the text box below said,
"You didn't love me then, and you don't even love me now."
followed by,
"Izzy used bite."
and just as the teeth animation for the bite attack played on screen, I felt a sharp pain in my heart. I quickly dropped the Game Boy and clutched my chest. As the Game Boy hit the floor, the batteries flew out and rolled to my feet. Suddenly the pain had stopped, and I caught my breath. I started to sob as I cleaned up the batteries and removed the game cartridge from the system. It's been 2 months since then, and everything has been more or less normal. The day after the strange events, I packed up all my games and gave them to my best friend Thomas. The funny thing, I haven't heard from him since then. And that was Pokemon Dogs, written by yours truly. So, there's another week. It's another story. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Definitely try to share this with people if you enjoyed it. Definitely like, subscribe. I'm always a big fan of that. And email me. I mean, heck, if you just want to say hi, I'll say hi back. I'm sure I have the time to do it. So, yeah. Also, all of the photo credit and story credits from now on are also going to go in the description. So, if you liked the photo, or, I'm also trying to bring people up with me at the same time. So, artists and such. Definitely send in your photos if your pictures that you've drawn, if you would like to be a part of the show in that aspect. Maybe you're not the most creative writer, but you still want to participate. That's definitely a good way to do it. You will retain full credit. Just make sure you include your name or whatever name you want to go under in the email, as well as maybe a link to your site or a link to your Flickr account or whatever, your DeviantArt account, wherever you put your photos or whatever. And so definitely would love some submissions for next week. If not, I'm kind of trying to write a new one here. It's called Comics. At least that's the working title right now. And yeah, so if I hear some good, people are excited about that, definitely will do that one. But I'd like to see what you guys got too, definitely. And yeah, so also in the description below is links to all of my Facebook, my Google Plus, my Twitter, all sorts of things. So feel free to like all of those. Definitely I'll feel love that way. So yeah, till next week, my Pastafarians, this is Chemo Creepypasta signing off.
And have a creepy